Shall I introduce and stuff? I suppose.
Yeah, well,
Go from
yeah.
the beginning. Should we do the good take, guys, again?
Yeah.
Hello again, comrades, to the good take, guys, with me, Marcus. And if you want to introduce yourselves.
It's Heath again. We're missing Chris though. So we're
Chris
only
is
at,
in the bad take zoo.
yeah, we're only at like 2/3 power, so I don't know how we're gonna go tonight.
Yeah, maybe this should be the average take, guys. Instead.
Yeah, let's not build ourselves up too much.
Yeah, that we're friends. We post stuff to each other on the WhatsApp and do messages and stuff. So I thought I would expound a theory that I had. So basically, the broad outlines of what I was saying, and I've not thought it through completely. So if you're looking to make a manifesto based on this audio, then you may struggle, dear listener. But I had a sort of vague idea that I was listening to some sort of, these critiques that people have of sort of nerd culture, and specifically the idea that it is in some way toxic, or that the people who like it are in some way engaging in a sort of dangerous pastime that could translate into sort of bad behaviour in the real world. I.e., think of the discourse around Joker and how it is some kind of dangerous thing that may empower young white men who are maybe incels or incel a bit adjacent to take their rage out on a potentially female population, even though that's a bit strenuous of a link to get from the film Joker. And I was thinking that this seemed to be a very similar discourse to a sort of 90s in discourse around like rap and hip hop, and how that was specifically a thing where sort of mainly conservative critics, including the conservative critic Bill Clinton himself, the Democratic president, would talk about black culture and how that would sort of force young black men into dangerous, violent acts, i.e. that the hip-hop music would include sort of things within it like, drugs, abuse of women, murdering the police, and Fuck the Police by NWA, which is a sort of anthem about taking your revenge on the police. And this could stir up violent acts within a pliable minority of the population who may cause violence to happen and something. And I thought, this seems to me that it's just updating a conservative trope from the 90s and 2000s and updating it now for a different minority group. And sort of, it seems to be a very similar discourse. Then humorously, just yesterday, The Guardian published a piece on there. No joke, ironic racism in comedy is just not funny. Which I think sort of has some elements of this, and also quotes a piece in a favourable right by David Brooks, who, if people don't know, is a sort of conservative commentator from the 2000s, and I don't know if his career stretches that back to the 90s, but he was also George Bush's speechwriter and was the architect of the specifically the speech of where he outlined the axis of evil. So just a day after I sort of proposed this theory, there's actually a sort of article that literally is supposed to be liberal, but then quotes an old conservative article from 2006, in this case about Borat. So I suppose we can get into the article itself and some of the sort of deeper things behind that. But first, Heath, what do you think of this thesis? Maybe we can get to the manifesto for the listener throughout on the way. But what's your opinion of that idea?
I think, I do think that it's sort of a. I do get what you're saying about a sort of like moral panic, I suppose. Is what you're sort of referencing is this idea that the things that people consume affect them to the point where they may do something that is wrong or whatever. So and it creates these sort of situations. And I agree with you on that point. In that it does have that sort of parallel to it, and I think specifically like the things that you brought up in regards to like what's the film you referenced? I've forgotten the name of it.
Joker.
Joker. Yeah, so like the Joker and that sort of thing, like that's something that sort of hasn't borne out because basically I think the film doesn't actually say what people thought it would, and that's I think where it's like the moral panic hasn't sort of really played out, and I think that as well it's to say like I think with the conservative moral panic like that was a lot of stuff that would never play out or that sort of thing, or it was more of a justification for things and like there was no real link to it. But yeah, the point I'm getting to is that there is like actual things that sort of look at, they call them like, right-wing pipelines or whatever. And so essentially how they work is that you sort of introduce, racist or sexist or whatever ideas to people in the form of jokes until it's you keep doing it until it's no longer a joke, and then like you like what you were posting ironically now becomes not ironic. And it's your true feelings, and it sort of leads you down that sort of path. And I think that there is sort of that is something that sort of definitely exists. But I think that there's also this over there is, you can take it too far and go like this is something that is like directly responsible for that, for whatever the outcome is, and it's got nothing to do with it. But then I think that's more to do with a misunderstanding of the media that you're critiquing rather than actually what the intended purpose of the media is, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, so it's like it's people getting confused basically with what they're actually critiquing is, or what the date. I suppose that the difference I would say is that I think that like the posts and stuff, or like Twitter, or like when you're interacting with, or like the jokes that you're doing, I think that that's not sort of the media that. The thing that I think is different is it's like, I know it's hard to explain, but the media people criticise as saying it's it's dangerous or something. Ready Player One, I suppose, could be another example where people think that is problematic because it gives a sort of worldview where it's like it's good, where it's just people wallowing in nostalgia or something, or that the main character is heroic even though they just sit around playing sort of video games all day. I think in order to have the joke to fash pipeline or something that we were saying, that you were saying before, that has to have, it's more like you have to have sort of an interpersonal relationship, I suppose, with the person that would be sort of doing that, rather than just an isolated piece of media. Like I don't think there would be like you could see a film and it would sort of normalize those kind of relations or something, if that makes sense. Like I think it has to be like it's a group indoctrinating somebody in by slowly.
Yeah,
it's the classic kind of thing, isn't it? Where it's like you say one thing that makes sense to people who haven't got an answer to something, and then you chisel away that make the thing that makes sense to them in order to. So you could say, like for the incel or something, you could say you're outcast from society, which could be true because of different things other than like their prognosis to the problem would be you're isolated from society because it's controlled by a liberal elite who don't like you for different opinions that you hold or something, rather than it could be that they are in a place where they don't have many meaningful interactions with people around them, and they haven't got this sort of base to create a meaningful life, so they retreat to like the internet or something, and no one says anything other than why their life is shit, other than these people who at first seem moderate, and then you chisel away the bit that is about why you're isolated to the point where you then have a totalizing worldview where it's based around things that, aren't real, like that women hate you because you are weird or something. I don't know, like that kind of thing. But yeah, I think an isolated piece of media can't do that. It's a specific group targeting people to get them to agree to their worldview. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no. Well, what I was more referring to was like sort of looking at what the intention of the media is, and so like I don't think necessarily like when you're sort of talking about like the start of that sort of, let's call it Joker to Fash pipeline, it like I think a lot of the sort of what I'm saying is the sort of moral panic around that is that this is one of those like lead-ins to it. Like, so this for the incel community, this is what's going to lead them down this path, because, and the justification for it is that this has been done before, but the difference is that the intention of the film is not to send people down some sort of right-wing like pipeline. That's not what the intention of the film is. Whereas like what they miss is that the like when they talk about these sort of things, a lot of the media is either created or curated specifically to sort of like push people down this pipeline. It's not something that happens organically. It's something that's manufactured. And I suppose sort of in regards to this article, I think that's something that's potentially that she misses. That sorry, not she, he misses. The writer of the article is that like because the article essentially talks about this idea of like racism in media and that sort of thing, and the writers or the performers doing blackface or something like that as an ironic racism sort of potentially creates this sort of thing. And what I'm getting at is like it's not the intention of the piece to promote racism. It's the intention of the piece to sort of break it down. But and I suppose they sort of get into that. I don't know what you've got to say sort of about that. I don't want to sort of keep going.
Well, we'll get to the article. I'll sort of read some passages from it for a moment. But I think as well that there's a difference between like, again, it's like the creator of like a film or something is doing something different from like the people who are. I don't know. It's like, so go back to the hip hop analogy of the 90s or something. There's definitely like 90s hip hop which glorifies like gangster lifestyle and stuff, and but I don't think many people would want that to be banned from the the urban community, to use the phrase that Michelle Day would do, because I think most people would look at that as it's like, I don't know, I think it's like they say, even if like, so say that there's definitely 90s hip hop which is presenting a view of gangster life which glorifies it and makes it seem like a sort of fun thing to do. But like the stuff in like Ready Player One, for example, or something, if you were to buy into sort of the criticism that it glorifies the sort of like lifestyle that people would find toxic or something, like I still don't think there's like a one-to-one pipeline of people look at it and they go, I don't think any more than people who are like hip hop would then go out and join a gang and start selling drugs and thinking it's a preferable lifestyle because of the hip hop or something. I don't think there are people who are going to go into Ready Player One and become like people who just sit around all day hating women and going online and thinking they're entitled to things and stuff because the criticism of Ready Player One is that it would inspire people to to think that they're entitled to things based on being a white man or stuff like that, or that it's nostalgia porn basically. But I don't think that that would necessarily be the case that people would watch it, and even if they're just doing it as a 2-hour bit of as escapism, in the same way that you could argue that somebody who listens to stuff that glorifies hip hop would, that they're just doing it as escapism, or they're doing it just to sample a different lifestyle kind of thing. I think that there's still the ability to, even if the intent of something is potentially problematic, it doesn't necessarily mean the audience will take on its issues and things. They won't take on the mindset of the piece itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, but that's sort of what I was getting at with like sort of having curated like media as well, like saying, you should watch this film, and sort of saying to people, this is the reading that you should have of this film, and that's what it is, or whatever this piece of media is so yes, you could definitely do that with let's say with like hip hop, like you could essentially send someone down a lifestyle of thinking that the gangster lifestyle is great and it's the best thing and it's what you should aspire to, and you can definitely do that, but that's not necessarily the intention of the work or of the artist, or it may well be the intention, but it just reinforces something for someone else. But that's what I was getting at things being like created and curated, in that like the intention is, it's not actually the fault of the piece of media. It is the way that it is presented to people. If there is sort of like maybe some ambiguous messaging or something like that, like you could say that Joker sort of has a bit of ambiguous messaging in it, and like you can. Like, I have seen criticisms of it where they've said that you could pretty much map any ideology onto it, because essentially the character of the Joker just sort of is pushed from one place to another, and he doesn't really... there isn't any sort of consistent ideology with him as a character. It's just the stuff that's going on around him that sort of illuminates things. But yeah, anyway, but yeah, what I'm getting at is that...
But that just seems realistic, though. Like, most normal people don't have an ideology that would... most normal people just are buffeted by events and stuff. So that doesn't seem like a problem to me of Joker or something like.
No. I don't think it's necessarily a problem of it, but what I'm saying is it's one of those things that you can, like... a savvy actor could, map their particular ideology onto it, and then basically use it as a sort of way of like saying to people, like, this is what you should think about this, and then once you let's go, for example, okay, let's go like sort of white supremacist, neo-Nazi type thing. So basically you could look at it as, you could say to someone, this is the people reacting to, this is a film about people reacting to the way that, rich elites mistreat people, and how, and then you sort of would go and, Thomas Wayne, represents, international banking, and then, you start with the international banking, and then you just keep going down that sort of rabbit hole, I suppose, of going, well, and then so you've got this film that you like, and then you've got someone saying to you, well, it's actually about this, it's about, and at the end of it, it's, the Jews control the world, and all they do is keep the white man down, and that sort of thing. You can see how you could get to that point from the film Joker.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that anything.
spoil the.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with the film Joker for that reason, because I think, as you've said, it is like it is a valid representation of like what this person's life might be like, just being buffeted from like uh, one traumatic event to another, and then just reacting to that event however they see fit. That's like a perfectly like valid, representation of this character, and probably a good realistic representation of the character. But yeah, it is definitely something that can be used, and that's what I'm getting at, is that like these things of in and of themselves aren't necessarily bad. It's how they are used.
Yeah, well, I think that the problem I have with how it's sort of represented then in, think pieces and stuff about it is that I think a lot of people miss the idea that it is not something inherent to the work itself, that it is just people misinterpreting it and not understanding it. So I actually think that the problem with the film Joker is that it is too much of a sort of like film that tries to pander too much, because I think the people who made Joker realised that it would be so controversial. It has these bits where it's unrealistic because the character sort of just references that what he's doing is wrong and stuff. Like there are these. I know you haven't seen it, have you? So
No,
I don't want to go
still
too
haven't
much
yet. No, go for it.
Do you mind if I spoil it?
Oh yeah, no, I know what happens in the film, so yeah.
So at the end of the film, he goes on TV and he kills the host of a TV show, and like what it does is it puts in the TV presenter's mouth basically the theme of the film. The guy goes like, "Why have you killed these people? This is wrong." And the Joker replies back, he goes, "This is what happens when you ignore someone like me in society." It's not like that. That's a quotation. That's like a it's not that exactly. It's obviously worded differently. And then he kills the guy, and it's like you would have to be paying so little attention to know what the theme of the film is. It's just actively misinterpreting the film because you've come in with a bias, basically, because the film takes so much effort in it, and makes it so obvious within the film, like that of what the theme is supposed to be, that it stops being ambiguous and then does become sort of a liberal kind of call to help people who are at the bottom and stuff. Like the film very clearly makes it out that the problem the character has is that sort of social services have been cut and then he can't get help, so he resorts to desperate means and stuff. And it makes pains to make him non-racist as well. Like the people he kills are white in it, and he has he does fancy like a black woman in it and stuff. And and his social worker is black, and he treats her friendly, and she's the person trying to help him and stuff. I think a problem with the film is if you compare it to something like Taxi Driver, where it's a very similar premise, but it's completely in the guy's head, and it's more ambiguous, so it works better as a work of art. You could say, thematically, it doesn't tell the audience what to think as much, but I think that's positive anyway. But it has these bits where it takes the audience out to try and tell what the message of the film is. So that's a side note on Joker and how I think people are misinterpreting, misrepresenting what it is, basically. For their own sort of purposes. But yeah, I think the problem is when people act as if the work of art that's in it can only be interpreted one way, and it's dangerous for people to be sort of exposed to it, rather than what you were saying, which I would agree with, which is that no matter what the thing has in it, it's how people interpret it that's an issue, rather than something that's an issue within the piece of art in and of itself.
Yeah, but I think that it does come back to sort of it does come back to like, because there is obviously like media that you can like very much go like, we talk about Christian films and stuff like that. Like there is media out there which is definitely like, this is what we want you to think. There is no ambiguity or anything like that. You think what we want you to think in this film. But I do, I think that there's, and I think potentially like if there's sort of any sort of moral ambiguity in the film, it probably is something that gets, slathered with this type of thing. Like it's, so it is, a reaction to this because someone comes along and basically maps onto whatever it is, and Joker, as I said, you can sort of nearly map whatever you want onto it. You can map a left-wing or a right-wing message on it quite easily. But someone comes along and they map onto it the worst possible scenario and then brand it as bad. And I think that's kind of what happened with the Joker, and I think that's what happens with a lot of this sort of media that causes moral panic within people.
Yeah, and I think it's people being told the wrong interpretation of things by people around them, really, and not seeing any alternative way of reading stuff, I suppose, which is the issue more than anything else. But I just think that, like, the people who, like, with Joker specifically, like, the people who look at it and just think it's some kind of, like, white wish fulfillment fantasy or something, it's like, I just think it's the most ridiculous reading of it possible. Like, he has legitimate issues within the film and stuff that there's reasons why he does stuff in it and things. And, like, I think it would have to be like a very, very, like, stretched interpretation of it to think it is sort of a white hero fantasy kind of thing. Like, I think that is just literally, I know it's difficult because you've not seen the film to sort of name specific things within it and to discuss it, but like I think you've got more of a chance with something like Ready Player One or something, which is significantly worse film / book as well than that. But I also think as well, like, critiquing the media of it and stuff, and as if that's the thing that has that would turn someone, like the media to fash pipeline as well, sort of ignores the elements of society that make people go into that kind of thing as well. Like that there's more things to critique as well than as if it's like a pipeline from one thing to the other as well and stuff. Like,
yeah,
like the reason why somebody would be attracted to it and stuff. I think that like it. I don't know. I think that the analysis people have of stuff is sort of doesn't spend enough time analysing the things that might make somebody look at Joker and think it's this reinforces my white supremacist view of the world or something, or like, oh yes, I do hate women because I've seen Ready Player One or something like that. I think that there's a gap in the sort of media representation of it that doesn't account for the sort of real world things that make. I suppose it's just the problem with a lot of this kind of moral panic stuff is it just reduces everything down to the idea that the art is the thing that can be criticised and stuff. And then it just ignores the actual underlying elements that make people. Because the reason, like with the hip hop stuff, the reason why people would be attracted to that is that they have no money and they see no way out of their own life other than, they see successful people around them who have basically been criminals and managed to get away with it and have lots of money. And even if it's an impertinent a thing that's immoral, then you don't see that as any more immoral than the system that sort of would push you down, I suppose. Or like it appeals to people because their own life is so terrible and stuff. But yeah, I suppose this is just bad criticism in general, isn't it? To just blame the work of art about going deeper into society. Yeah.
Well, no, absolutely right. Like I agree with you. Like the with the whole hip hop thing, and I was actually going to say the exact same thing, that it is, and I think it's sort of also, it's not within the sort of corporate media's best interest though to also dig into that sort of thing, because sort of once you sort of start exposing that sort of that sort of thing starts to get exposed, like the reasons why people would be feeling so like disaffected and that sort of thing, that these extreme messages appeal to them. Like I don't think it's in their best interest to actually bring that stuff to light, because I suppose it'd be sending people down the opposite like rabbit hole or a pipeline, if you will. to do that. Like, it doesn't serve the status quo to actually dig into that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the thing that benefits the status quo, as you were saying, is instead of people questioning, the underlying stuff that would cause somebody to have these kind of issues, or it's to create a discourse which is entirely discursive. It's just about debating the messages behind stuff and creating like a good media, but then without fixing any of the underlying issues that would turn somebody into just, like it just, instead of fixing the problems, it's just creating a better sort of media environment. But I think the problem though with that's happened with this is, for the media, I can see why they would do it. Like, why, if you were sort of a rich person, and it's typical divide and conquer stuff, isn't it? You don't want people talking about the things that unite them, so you talk about, the things that divide them, or you put their interests out of, you say that these bad people have bad opinions and that's why they're bad, rather than the society has caused them to have underlying issues that makes them be susceptible to bad opinions, just they're desperate and need some kind of assistance they're not getting. So the only person that says is that the reason is the bad people, basically. But I think the problem with this is it creates an environment where people genuinely believe then that the discourse is what causes people to have these bad opinions, kind of thing. So because people then get their ideas from sort of mainstream media, which doesn't want to talk about underlying issues or anything, then people start to believe that the reason why people are like that is because of things like the Joker or something, or that they've seen bad tweets or something, and it creates an attempt to then control the discourse rather than to then look at any of the underlying issues and stuff. If that makes sense, like, it creates true believers who actually think the discourse is the thing that's the important thing, rather than the underlying premises behind society and the nature of exploitation in society, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Like, I don't think that there's like, yeah, the idea is that these are sort of individual moral failings. It's not got anything to do with it's not got anything to do with like material conditions or anything like that would make people, as you said, make people desperate and try and find answers to their problems. I agree with that. I do think that there is, like, I think it's sort of, and again, it's sort of it is, walking a tightrope, I suppose, is that, there is this, the discourse definitely, like, affects people, and like, I suppose, like I said before, like, it will send them down, the sort of left-wing pipeline. I suppose, like, so it can go both ways. And I think that, like, both of them, in both cases, they do put forward a reason why, your material conditions are this way, like on the left-wing and the right-wing side of things. They do that. It just happens that the right-wing side is wrong. But they can present it a little bit more flashily.
Bias.
No, yeah, this is very biased. This show. We don't have our token liberal to give us a more right wing perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I still think though that, like, even with the left wing and the right, the discursive thing as well, it's like even the left wing one, the reason why people are more prone to that, again, it is material conditions, isn't it? It's people seeing their materials conditions decline, and then they seek answers to it, and it depends which one appeals to you, or the sort of right wing one or the left wing one, based on, I suppose, what arguments you see, or what stuff is around you, basically, and stuff. But I still think though that the basis of what is behind it and is, but again, though, I think that there must be something more than just the discursive element to it, though, for why you would choose one or the other, because otherwise, then it's not just which argument you're exposed to first, is it really? Like, you wouldn't, if you'd have seen like a right wing argument first, you wouldn't have gone towards that, would you? As opposed to the left wing one that you've have got as well. I wonder what is the actual thing where you could have two people who have the same. Well, I suppose it's not the same material conditions. If you look at people who are attracted to the sort of left wing and the right wing thing, there are different underlying things that cause people to go one way or the other and stuff. Like they tend to be exposed to different things in the real world rather than the discursive element or something. Like you could say like the like economic precarity and stuff. Like people who are left wing tend to be economically precarious in a way that's different from people who are right wing in a sort of more material basis kind of thing, basically. Like people who are left wing, to do broad generalizations of some sort, tend to be sort of more highly educated. They'll tend to be university graduates who have just finished and they can't get the life that they were promised before, so then they seek answers for that, which might be more state intervention to prop up things that would maybe benefit them or something. Like left-wing platforms people have run on recently are free college tuition or something, so you give people the opportunity you've had or something. Getting industries back up and state intervention to help that, basically. But say that you were, a right-wing person who may have had a similar experience of economic precarity, but it's a different type of thing, isn't it? It's like, it tends to be more rural areas that have seen their economies sort of decline because there's no sort of manufacturing base anymore there or something. And the thing that might make more sense to you for there would be something like an anti-immigration thing, where, people are saying that your jobs have gone and, there's more immigration there. They should kick out the immigrants who are there to stir local investment again, or to get less people there to compete for the jobs which are more scarce there. Well, I would say that like a sort of the material conditions for sort of someone, again, who's maybe in a city, who's a graduate, might be that there are jobs there and you're working along people who are, different races, different ethnicities. So you're seeing people there and you have more of a real world basis in that. It's just the jobs that are there are insecure, and you might want people to stop that insecurity, like the government, for example, rather than to blame sort of to bring it, to get a very broad overview. I think that there are still the material things that make people attracted to a left or a right wing discourse, if that makes sense.
I definitely, I don't think there's like there is a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it, like beforehand. I think that there's obviously where you've grown up, what your parents are like what opportunities do you have or don't you have, all that sort of thing. Like that does actually sort of impact whether what you would where you would necessarily go with that. But it's it's not always 100%, obviously. Nothing really is. So you have to deal in generalizations, because it's not really there's obviously going to be exceptions to the rule, but there'll be exceptions. But go on. But I do think that there's I think there is definitely those elements, but I also think there is sort of I suppose social element to it, in regards to I suppose I sort of used the word flashy before, but I think that's sort of the way the way that it is, because I think if you're looking at things that for example, if we talk about media, to sort of bring this back, talk about media critique on the left wing and on the right wing, you find that a lot of the sort of more right wing guys, they give the absolute opinions, they and they're always sort of incendiary opinions about whatever media and what it represents and all that sort of thing, and you go down that way. Whereas I think on the left wing, you've got sort of more people going sort of, I suppose, like, things are subjective. This is my interpretation. What do you think? That sort of like I think there's that sort of difference, and like I think people are maybe like more attracted to the more sort of definitive, takes and objective views of things, so they don't have to necessarily think too much about it. And I think that there's slightly a bit of that in it, but I don't think it's. I think it's sort of a 95 to 5% thing. Like, 95% of it is like material conditions, and like 5% of it is this sort of like the way things are presented to the people that might sort of push them down that way.
Yeah, I would say that's broadly accurate. Yeah, that it's mainly the sort of material aspects, and then there's some element of the discursive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that the thing that just annoys me is when people talk about things like the media, that like, because obviously it's different in it with criticism. There's a wide range of stuff that you can criticize a film for, other than just representational bits or what sort of political message it's trying to say. Like, obviously a lot of films don't say anything political, or well, not any. Obviously there's that idea that everything in it's sort of political, but the thing that annoys me, I think it's a broad sort of media critique of like what the thing is. Obviously that like politics is really big right now, because sort of the current status quo is sort of falling down kind of thing. So there's more of a market incentive to base critiques of media around just what it's trying to say politically, basically, or what the message of a film is. And obviously with the sort of media construct that we have now and stuff, it's heavily based around getting clicks and stuff. So a really measured opinion of a piece of art, like the Joker or something, for example, or anything really that may have elements that could be construed as problematic or something, will not be as widely read as something which is just an easy headline grabbing take or something. Because obviously the benefit that you get of, and it's run by both sides in a way, the sort of more liberal side and the sort of conservative side, is just to go. And I think what you were saying though about the this is my opinion, what do you think kind of stuff, that's right to some degree, to good sort of content sort of stuff, where it's obviously trying to start a dialogue or trying to expand somebody's opinion of, it's trying to make people think, isn't it? It's trying to get someone to critically engage with the work. It's not saying this is my take, it's saying this is an interpretation from a stir on what you might think, which I think is the basis of what good criticism is. It's not giving you like a objective thing, just saying this is bad or good or something, unless if there's obviously technical aspects of it which are bad, which you can critique. But from a thematic element, it's not just saying this is good or bad, it's saying these are some ways you could interpret it, and then it's letting the audience come to an opinion of their own. But to get something which is just widely read, basically, if you just put something like Joker is incel porn, or the opposite side could be a feminist film hates men, what you'll get is, you won't just get your own audience of people who agree with it, you'll also get people posting who are also like, this person is so biased, and they've not actually even read the piece that they're talking about. They're just going off the headline, basically. And I think what you also get, which is really annoying, is you get lots of good opinion pieces which have got terrible headlines as well, and then people just post basically stuff that is an attempt to critique what their headline is. Like, I was watching a video by Ben Burgess, who obviously we're both fans of, and he was talking about Jacobin, the magazine, which I think has some good stuff on there. It's got a lot of crap on there, like a lot of these sort of opinion websites do, but there's some good writers on there. And he was talking about how he wrote an article which was about the people protesting, protesting basically at the beginning of the lockdown. They were protesting the lockdown, and his article was about how people on the left shouldn't just ignore them as cranks. They should basically, realise that unless if something's done economically to help people who are suffering during the lockdown, then there'll just be more reaction against the lockdown, and it'll spread wider from the sort of crazy people to more sane people who are just struggling to pay rent because there's not enough economic help for them. So his argument would be to start like a UBI or something. But anyway, the headline title was something like, ignore the protesters at your peril or something. And yet people didn't read the article. They just said, like, why are you giving these protesters, why are you saying we should listen to them? They're cranks. Then the people who were protesting hadn't read the article and were saying how it was good and stuff. And it's good for business to create this environment where people don't read stuff and they don't engage with stuff. They just engage with, like, what they think it means kind of thing. But yeah, for actual discourse or anyone understanding things, it's terrible for that. But I think there's business incentives to write these articles that just say this is definitively what this is. But that's what I was going to say in a very long manner.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think that, and specifically with that article, like, it was probably about the most milquetoast opinion ever. Like, just like we, like, we don't have to listen to these cranks, but like to dismiss like these protests outright is probably not the best thing to do. But anyway, yeah, I think you're right with all that sort of stuff. I think that we're pretty much in agreement in regards to this whole thing. This is why we need Chris in this.
To say something against it. Well,
we've spent the last 40 minutes circling around the same point. Like, we both agree with it. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, let's take apart the article that the others like. Then the one in the Guardian, which I say proves. I think. Well, first of all, I suppose actually, because the guy talks about Borat in the piece about Borat the film, which I'm assuming you've seen because everyone's seen it. It was massive at the time. I think there is an argument that Borat could be seen as being slightly problematic in that the characters from Kazakhstan and could be seen to represent that rather than, it would probably have been a smart idea to just invent a country for its purposes in that. Like, do you have any thoughts on Borat, the cultural icon from a few years ago?
Not really. It's funny, but it has been sort of just, I suppose, memed into into like a parody of itself, and so it doesn't sort of have the cultural cachet and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that. I think it's probably one of those things where it's like, at the time, yeah, okay, fair enough. Like it's a product of its time more than anything else. But yeah, it's a tough one because I can see okay, so you could definitely make the argument about Borat that the only reason it's sort of got legs is because of sort of around when it was made, the sort of Middle Eastern Muslim population wasn't, everyone's favorite. And you could sort of make an argument now that, potentially what it depicts is when not in that sort of post 9/11 fever, that you sort of, so now it would be probably seen as being a bit more problematic to portray Arab people or Muslim people in that particular way now. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think that it's something that I don't think the changing times we shouldn't be applying the same sort of filter we have now to things that were made however long ago. We can talk about the context and that sort of thing, but to say that piece of media which was of its time is now bad because of now it doesn't meet our moral standards. I think that's. I don't think we necessarily need to be doing that.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah, but I think there's a thing and all that I think is very annoying that people do when they critique pieces of media that have problematic stuff in as well, which is that they apply there's a standard thing where people don't sort of apply realistic ideas to history. We'll do the article in a separate thing actually, so we'll try and get it under an hour. But just as a sort of a general point, I suppose to end on is that they will apply like the lens of what they think people should believe about history, and then they'll do that. So like when people make a work of art or something about a historical subject like slavery or something, and they'll say it's got a problematic portrayal because it has like a person who is a slave or something in it, who is acclimatized to the situation that they're in, and they'll say it's problematic because it portrays people in a certain way. But it is true though that when people do acclimatize themselves to the situation that they're in, and there will have been people who experience like slavery or something, or not something that extreme maybe, but like female characters in older films who don't have the opinions of a sort of modern feminist or something. Like when people live within structures that oppress them and stuff, they don't realize usually what the actual structural oppression is that's within, like they don't understand that they're being oppressed in a way, and they just get used to the thing that's doing it. And I think to understand history in a better way and stuff, that things should portray things like that without being called problematic, because it's just they should, in order for us to defeat things which are problematic in the here and now and stuff. I think it's good to have portrayals of things from earlier that actually show a realistic version of like that maybe women who were in patriarchal societies wouldn't even realize that was it and would just go along with it at the time and stuff. Or the same thing with black characters in older films and stuff. You wouldn't necessarily realize that you were being oppressed while you're being oppressed, and you would just go on with it and stuff. I think that there are some people who don't want older things to have modern portrayals of it, but not necessarily just modern portrayals, but you could make something now where somebody, if like a 40s film where characters weren't actively feminist and stuff, but I think that would cause more of an issue now because people would want it to, if that makes any sense.
If you want a like great portrayal of this, actually is it's on Netflix, Hollywood, I think it's called, and it's a Ryan Murphy show, so yeah. Anyway, but basically, yeah, it is like absolutely like 100% sort of, I suppose you could say, like liberal propaganda. Essentially, it all boils down to so the thing of this this TV series is they're trying to make a movie that has like a black main actress in like 1940 and that sort of like that 1940s post World War II the US, and basically she would be like the first black actress, and like the screenwriter was like half Filipino, and like the director was half Filipino, the writer was a black man, and blah blah blah, and them going up against like the Hollywood machine to get this made, and but basically as it goes on at the end, it sort of says that it sort of tacitly says, I don't think it's like this is its intention, but like it sort of tacitly says that the reason why racism and homophobia and sexism existed so long was that individuals didn't sort of stand up to the system. And individuals didn't stand up to other individuals to change their mind, which is like, sort of a very, I suppose, liberal take, I would say, that like this is like all of these things are individual moral failings. sort of bringing it back to what I was saying earlier, that there's, like, that's the problem. It's not a system that creates, all these sort of this situation that these people find themselves in. It's because they're not, strong enough to resist, these dark forces aligned against them and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's what I sort of think about the whole thing. I think it's a very sort of centrist sort of way, I'm going to say, something that supports the status quo, to sort of, push out media that says that these things are individual moral failings, and that's what I think the purpose of this sort of idea that people have of actually sort of sanitizing media of all bad representations. I think that's sort of what sort of the thing that they want to push is this idea is that these are not systemic issues; they're the moral failings of individuals.
Yeah, exactly. It's to sort of make history into a thing where everyone who was sort of at the bottom realised they're at the bottom and was unhappy about it all the time and didn't do anything. It's as you say. It's that there were individual failings that weren't. Yeah, there's no sort of pressure on them from above, or there's no idea that they. It's almost like an interpretation of history where people realise they're in history and realise that there's a sort of path to progress, really, and that they should be on it and stuff. Should realise that. Well, it's like Whig history in a way, where there's just one road that always leads to progress, and there's never been any deviations from it, or people have always realised this and wanted to go from it and stuff. Like, I don't know, like you look at like Gone with the Wind or something, which obviously had issues and stuff that people were talking about how. Well, one element of it was that the characters who are in it who are like maids and stuff at the house and stuff, and seem to be like relatively content with their sort of situation and stuff. But I think that in a way, like there would have been people there who just wouldn't have known any different and would have just become naturalized within the situation that they were in and stuff. Like, I think it's important that people reckon with the fact that not everyone has always been unhappy with the situation that they've been in, and that they've had to, just as a survival mechanism, really, and stuff. Like, if you have no realistic way to change anything, you're just going to get used to where you are and stuff. It's the same, like, because, like in 100 years or something, if they abolish like work and stuff, like you wouldn't want to abolish things where people are happy at work then because they don't realise it's a form of wage slavery, would you? Stuff like, I'm sure that there is obviously stuff to criticise with Gone with the Wind and stuff. I think that particular thing about it is not like a particularly potent thing to actually criticise.
Yeah, I think. Well, I sort of thought the same sort of way about like Gone with the Wind. Until recently, and I actually saw something where they were like discussing the book and that sort of thing, and like, the book that it's based on, and that the purpose of the book that it is based on is actually to portray, slaves as being like happy with their lot in life, and that sort of thing. So like, sort of that element
like that slavery should never have ended.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's apparently bits in the book where the like one of the like down and out sort of white characters in it was saying that like he would prefer to be a slave because his food would be provided and his shelter would be provided and he would be looked after by his master and that sort of thing. So there's that sort of thing in it, and I think like looking at it now, it's like there didn't seem to be like a terrible lot of pushback on that idea from the original like story. So it's sort of like again, it's a sort of tacit like approval of that idea. But yeah, I think
even though with that though you could do interesting stuff like that sentiment though that people were saying that that down and out sort of white people were against sort of slaves and stuff. That was actually a popular sentiment within people who were like completely at the bottom during. In fact, that was one of the ways that obviously people stirred up anti-black sentiment by saying, even these slaves have got it better than you and stuff. Was the book though saying that they had like they actually did have it worse than stuff?
Yeah. So the whole point of the book was to sort of whip up this sort of anti-black sentiment and that sort of thing, and show them as being unreasonable for not wanting to be slaves and stuff like that. So it was written in the antebellum sort of period after the Civil War. Like it's definitely like what it is definitely like painting like not like basically painting the idea that there were people saying to people that they're worse off than the slaves and that sort of thing, and stoking that sort of that idea. It's definitely that's what the original book's intention was. But yeah, then because there's Gone with the Wind was made like 80 years after that, I think, something like that, or maybe less, maybe 50 years after that. I can't. Anyway.
Well, I suppose that's actually a good example of like. Yeah, we should end here actually because it actually ties in quite nice, and we'll do the article in a separate thing because I'm sure it's been an hour now. But that actually ties in pretty well though with what we were saying originally. We can use this as the example to end on, because the only reason why somebody would find that take that black slaves at least have, because they are a commodity, you have to look after a commodity. Well, you could argue that at the time period there'd be no help for poor whites and stuff, so they would just be thrown out as extraneous human beings essentially. The only reason why that would be something that you could read it and identify would be is if you genuinely were at the bottom and stuff, and you're at such a low point, you would basically you would rather be a commodity that would at least get some kind of care and attention and would be kept alive basically just to further exploit. So yeah, like that's the only reason why you would find that to be a persuasive argument. So that again shows, I suppose, why the things that people are going through are the thing that leads them to the Gone with the Wind to Ku Klux Klan pipeline, I suppose, is their contemporary Twitter to Fash pipeline.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. There we go. We've solved we solved transphobia last time. Now we've solved the bad take economy. So let's go to solving the Guardian in the next thing we talk about. Okay.
All right. Cool.